This morning we're gonna talk about the creation of the world. So we're gonna read Genesis chapter 1, and probably we will not go any further than that, but we'll see how the time goes. But so we're gonna talk about the creation of the world, how God created everything, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about why I'm talking about it as time goes on, as we speak. But we're gonna go line by line, try to visualize how God created the heavens and the earth. So we're going to start in chapter 1, verse 1. It says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the earth. And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening, there was morning, one day." So this is a beautiful picture of how God kind of tells us how things have started. Imagine Moses, when he was writing the first 5 books, he didn't actually have to start it with this. God told him to tell the world how he himself created everything. He gives us his story of how these things came about. So you're looking at the heavens and the earth. God is telling us how they came here. In the first day, God creates the earth without form and void. I was thinking about what that means. So if something is created out of form, without a form, what was the shape of the earth when it was created? You know what a sphere is, right? Sphere is a ball. It's like a round object, but that has a form. If I have a cylinder, it has a form, right? Any kind of object, think about it, there may be a form to it. But when God creates the earth, there is no form to the earth. And it's empty. It says void, but God tells us that there was water over the face of the earth, and the Spirit of God was hovering over it. So imagine God creates the heavens in this way. We know that the stars are not created yet. Heavens is the space perhaps that he creates. And he puts the earth right in the middle of it, or whatever it is, somewhere in the heavens, but it's without form. He decides that there's going to be a light and there's going to be a darkness. But since the sun is not created yet, it's not coming through suns or the stars yet. So that's the first day. Imagine a space is created, earth is formed, and it's without a form. Created without a form. And we're going to read now day 2. And verse 6, and God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it separate the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament and separated the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. God called the firmament heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, a second day. So imagine a scene where we have space, earth without a form. There are waters on the face of the earth. God tells us so. He decides to create this firmament to separate the waters from above from the waters below. So I had to look at the word firmament to understand what it means. And what is God talking about, separating the waters from above from the water below? Well, but there's waters involved. What's that? Clouds. So sky, clouds. I looked at the word firmament. It comes from the word firm, something that is established as firm. It's not very complicated word. Think about a time before the word atmosphere was invented. It was only used a few hundred years ago. There was no such thing as, humanity didn't know this word yet. Somebody came up not too long ago. Atmos means vapor, sphere, atmosphere, it means ball. So atmosphere is the vapor ball, basically, around the earth. And God couldn't use the word, perhaps, to describe this firmament, meaning these layers that are keeping the oxygen that we're breathing from escaping into the outer space somehow. All the gases and the nitrogen and everything that gives us life on earth. God used this word firmament, something that is firm, is like a dome, keeping the waters above from the waters below. Have you ever looked around to see all the forests of the world? You look at the world's, like a satellite imagery of the world, these trees that are like billions and trillions of trees, who waters them? My daughter is trying to water some plants in his backyard. They go away for a few days. Somebody has to worry about these little poor plants. Can you imagine how all of these plants had to be watered so that the trees that are getting all the waters they need to survive? So God creates the firmament. And again, I'm not saying firmament is equal to atmosphere, but it sounds like something like an atmosphere that we understand. It's a firm thing that is around the world, separates the waters above, right? That's how they get their, all the forests that you see around the world have gotten their water somehow from above. So the water evaporates in the oceans, the wind blows it, the clouds go to the forests that are deep in the land, and they just bring it down on earth. Somehow this mechanism has worked because God created the firmament to separate the waters from above from the ones that are below. It takes them an entire day to, and if you look at the layers of the atmosphere and you study atmospheres and other planets, you will see how sophisticated our atmosphere is. It's very sophisticated. And I'm no expert, but as much as I can grasp, I understand that He created this in the very beginning because it was so essential to life on earth. Yes.
Say in one day, what that doesn't mean 24 hours.
That
could mean years.
That's a good question. Nick just brought it up, the language of one day, and I'm going to actually explore that in a little bit. So just bear with me. I have many thoughts on this. So we're going to go to day 3, which is verse 9. And God said, this is Genesis chapter 1, verse 9. God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place. Let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together He called seas. God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth put forth vegetations, plants, plant yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, and each according to its kind upon the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plant yielding seed according to their kind, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, a third day. So the entire third day is dedicated to God pushing the waters into one section and creating the land. So the land's appearing. The continents, if you want to call it, and the oceans, they're now separating. And then God creates the plants. Vegetation, plants yielding seed, fruit trees. So all the vegetations and the trees and the plants are created in day 3. So you can visualize this now. God has created on the first day this formless earth covered with water and a space. Day 2 puts a firmament around it to create water above. And also, another side note is that the dew, the clouds that are coming on earth, really, the plants are actually very much benefited by that water as well. There's water vapor, there's firmament, they're above and below, seem to be like pretty sophisticated. And on day 3, he separates the waters from the lands, and then he puts the vegetations and the plants and the fruit trees on the dry lands, or at least their seeds. So far, so good. Verse 14, this is day 4. So far, the light and the day that God creates is kind of unclear to us. What is the light? Where is it coming from? Right? The sun is not created yet. It's coming on the day 4. Let's read this. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let there be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. Let them be lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth, to rule over the days and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. There was evening, there was morning, a 4th day. Right there, it is utterly counter signs, what we just read. God says, "I've created the earth in the beginning, and I've created the sun and the moons and the stars afterwards." That's totally opposite of what people teach now. Right?
I'm not sure what they're teaching now. Right. I don't know.
Well, we'll talk about it. I'm actually specifically picking this subject today. I know that our little ones are like trying to chew on it, what they're hearing from outside. We have heard so many things all of our lives. But God tells us that the sun and the moon and the stars were created later. The earth was first created. Now, the question, a lot of the times, even the Christians have been talking about the subject of the first chapter, how everything came about. You brought up the issue of day. Like, what was the definition of the day before the sun was created, right? Today, we define the day by Earth spinning around itself, one full circle, looking up to the sun. That's what a day is. So, like, if 12 o'clock, you're looking at sun at the highest point, it takes 24 hours for the Earth to spin and come back to that same point. That's how we define day on Earth, right? So if the sun wasn't created, was Earth, questions, these are questions, was Earth spinning around itself yet? Was Earth spherical? It was made out of without form. When did it become a sphere? You know now it's a sphere. When did the Earth start spinning around the sun? Right? Without these, we won't have a definition of day. We won't have a definition of seasons. God is using the sun and the moon and the stars to define for signs for seasons, fall, winter, spring, summer, right? The axis spinning around the sun defines the seasons. Where am I? Day, which is Earth spinning around itself, and years. So like, I guess the Earth finishing in one cycle around the sun one time and getting back to the exact space, right? So the axis of the Earth creating the seasons while it's spinning around the world and the distance to the Earth. So God is managing this all on day 4. But the question becomes, what is a day before the day 4, before the sun is created to mark the day, mark the season, mark the year? So I was just thinking about it. One way about going about it to look around to see how long it takes for other planets to have their days, right? So like when you're using, if I was on Mercury, it takes 176 days, Earth days, for it to spin around itself once. In Venus is 243 days. So one day is 243 Earth days in Venus. It takes 27 days for the moon to spin around itself and finish its cycle. Mars is very close to Earth.
I call that a lunar year, right?
I cannot answer that question. Mars, it takes about 24.6 hours. Jupiter is 10 hours. Saturn is 10 hours. Uranus is 17. Neptune is 16. Pluto is 6.4 days. So clearly, if I was in a different planet, the day is the planet spinning around itself and coming to the same location as the sun, being straight up again, it's different. So the word day has a very different meaning in different planets. The question is, was the Earth in the day 1 and 2 and 3 was 24 hours? Or was it longer? Was it shorter? Question marks. I'm just making you think. I've heard strong Christian camps saying that day has a very clear meaning, so it has to be 24 hours. That makes me think that then God had to wear a watch and put it on 0, press the button, and should have gone 24 hours to define the day, so that he created the first day he created the heavens and the earth, and it was 24-hour Earth day that we understand. But that's kind of hard to imagine for me. So like day 1 and 2 and 3 becomes kind of, go figure it out. What is he talking about? So if somebody says, I believe it was 24-hour Earth day, I have no problem. God could have used 24-hour Earth day to create day 1 and 2 and 3. If somebody says, I'll give room for God to do whatever he seemed that he has done in those 3 days before the sun was created, I buy that too. I cannot really imagine how I can go one way or another and say, hey, you're wrong or you're wrong. Especially where Peter in chapter 2, 2 Peter chapter 3, this is 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 5, but they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, they haven't existed, and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also the world at that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word, the present heavens and the earth are preserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly men. He's saying, long time ago, the heavens existed by God's power, and that also earth and the heavens are preserved for fire. So whatever God is creating today, as we are reading it today, it's going to be burned up someday. The earth and the heavens are going to be burned up. Peter says it in, I think at least, he says it right here. But do not forget this one thing, dear friends, verse 8. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. Do not forget this one thing, dear friends. With the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years are like a day. Why would Peter insert such a sentence? So he's saying for God, a day is 1,000 years. So that means if one day is 1,000 years, 1 year for God could be 365,000 years. These are obscure numbers that I cannot even comprehend. I'm just playing on wordplays now. I'm not proposing one or the other here. I'm just saying that I think what Peter's trying to say, and then he says, and 1,000 years are like a day. How could 1,000 years be like a day? For us, it doesn't make sense because we're so programmed and clocked into this Earth's rotation around itself, and the year is defined so clearly for us, Earth rotating around the sun one time. But eternal God, what does that mean? He doesn't have a beginning. An eternal God, he doesn't have an end. What is a time? How does time compute for God? Time computes for me because I get older as we celebrate our birthdays, we're ailing, but what would a time mean to God? So anyway, why am I saying all these things? So day becomes take or leave it, however you want to proceed. Give God room, and give somebody who sees that the sun and the moon wasn't created until day 4, give them some room. And if somebody says, I'm absolutely positive it's 24 hours, I'm fine with that too, because it could have been the 24 hours. God didn't tell me what he means by that and how it worked out. But this becomes a huge issue for believers. I'll say it why. For years myself, I could not really read the chapters of Genesis, at least the first chapter or the second chapter, without quickly glossing over, because I was afraid that it's going to challenge my faith. What faith? Well, we are born into this world and we hear the same things. The earth came later, the sun and the moon with the Big Bang, and we have been hearing about the word evolution. So these words are so many times used around us that we have heard it so many times in so many places and so many different times that when we hear God saying, hey, it's not how it happened. This is how it happened. Now, it becomes faith challenging. Do I believe the consensus of what is being taught, or do I believe God? Can I put my faith into what he says? Let's continue on. Verse 20. And God said, let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the firmament of the heavens. So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening, there was morning, a fifth day. So, sun and the moon is created. I can absolutely say at this point, unless God chose the earth to spin at a different rate, the day was defined. I would imagine that the day is defined from here on. So when the fifth day comes, we're not talking about a long period of time. It's now defined by the function of the sun. Does that make sense? So now day, we can assume it's 24 hours now, right? Only other obstacle would be the earth spinning around itself slower than what it is today, which is a possibility, or that earth was spinning around the sun slower, so it took a longer time to finish it. That's the only thought I can have, that if God chose so, that it wasn't spinning at the same rate as today. But otherwise, if I was to take it at face value and he established the earth day at the day 4, then the fifth day is 24 hours, as we understand it. So he creates the sea, living organism in the seas, the fish and all that, on day 5, and then he creates also the birds. But he tells them to, it says, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas and let the birds fly on the earth. So they were to reproduce and multiply. So he didn't necessarily make the whole sea full of fish. I would like to make a side note on the stars. The Bible says God created the sun and the moon, and then he says, and the stars, right? Like, makes you wonder, okay, the sun and the moon has function, and the stars, Michael brought up a little while ago how They can actually tell us the time as well. But as humanity is looking into the stars and the galaxies, right? They're discovering that like the galaxies have billions of stars inside and there are billions of galaxies. Why would God create such numerous galaxies and stars? One may ask themselves, what is the function? What is God wasting his time creating all these stars in the in the universe? What do they do for humanity? My thought on this is that God wants us to know how powerful he is. Do you understand the power of God? That he can create stars so numerous and so many? Like if God created only the sun and the moon and the planets that we live with in the solar system, and he created the life on Earth, I would think like, okay, God has powers. But when you see the stars and that humanity has figured out that they're kind of like infinite, it's like almost like you're like appalled. It makes me think that I'm dealing with a very powerful God who can create things just like that. Just like that, just to tell his children on earth that he's very, 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 very beyond our understanding powerful. So that we can put our faith, our trust in him and not fear things on earth. Rebecca is going to see some of the Christian colleges. And one of the things that she's doing, she's talking to the mission officers, she's talking to some of the biology professors about their view on some of these things that we're talking about today. She came back from a college, I was about to name it, but I won't. And she asked, about what their standing is, whether on evolution, for example. And this is Rebecca's word, and they've skirted the answers. So it becomes relevant to why I'm sharing this, perhaps, even though I was studying it on my own, but I will continue on, and I'll kind of connect some of what Rebecca is dealing with for our children or us. So God creates on day 5 all the living creatures and all the birds. Verse 24. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the cattle according to their kinds, and everything that creeps upon the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, so now the waters have fish or living things. The birds of the air on day 5 is created. Now day 6, all the things that are on the ground, either creeping or running, are created on earth. Right? Then God said, verse 26, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them, and God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed, which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I've given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, a 6th day. So let's talk about some more about this subject. So God is telling us day by day how he made things in the order he made them. So I have a choice to say, you know what? This may be a little counter to what I've been taught, but I have a choice to trust God and believe that he actually made everything and he's telling us exactly how he did them. What is the alternative? If this is not the truth. So yesterday I was sitting at my Panera, and somebody we know passed by, and the very first thing he said, what about evolution? Honestly. He said, what about evolution? What do you believe on that? Right? He knows, our faith, obviously. And then he went to the bathroom. So I had a choice. I had a second because I didn't see him coming. I was sitting, he passed through me. What about evolution? Wow. and then he said, okay, let me use the bathroom and I'll come back in. So you give me a 1 second in a way, or at least like a moment to think about it. And I thought to myself, the alternative is primordial soup. You know what a primordial soup is? Primordial soup is the explanation how life started on Earth. That's the explanation of today. Meaning that some lifeless things in the waters somehow got energized and life started on Earth. That is the alternative, and that is the best they have gotten so far to how life started on Earth. Why are you taking into the evolution? Evolution is like hundreds of steps away. Let's talk about how life started. And this is where it starts. Primordial soup. So I thought to myself, wow. So I have a choice to believe God in the way that he says everything was made, or I have to, just like a doubting person cannot put their faith in God, but they don't want to put their faith in primordial soup. But that's the only explanation they got. Because there's no other explanation of how life started on Earth. This is all they got. They can fantasize the situation as best as they can. But it's really all they got is this, primordial soup. I thought to myself, you know what? Yeah, this requires faith to believe in God, but that also requires a lot of faith, man. How could I really believe that we all came from primordial soup? Meaning, look at the trees, man. Look at the animals. Look at the humans. Look at the birds. Look at the sea creatures. Look at all the things that are around us. And did you guys know that some of the oxygen is escaping the atmosphere? Did you guys know that? But the trees are making enough to compensate. That's why we're not suffocating here. The system works so perfectly that we've been able to live here. Like I have a coworker, he was fantasizing someday that they're gonna go to Mars and colonize. I said, if you go to Mars, you know what you're gonna be doing? You're gonna be living in a bunker. Everything is gonna be supernaturally, everything will be supplied to you because it's not hospitable. You're never gonna see the ocean. You're not gonna have a green sky. You're not gonna breed anything. There's gonna be no trees growing. You're gonna be in a bunker. A concrete bunker to protect you from everything. And oxygen is going to be perhaps manufactured. And that's what there is to look forward is. There's really, I love being on the ocean. I love being on the sand. I love being able to have fruit trees. None of that is going to happen even in the closest planet in Mars. So I take it at God's word. This is how it happened. Now, one can say, then how do you understand what has been spoken in the scientific world and the consensus that they're reaching? So we don't have to be stupid. We can also, first of all, Like, the more you live, the more you understand how knowledge, we call knowledge, comes about. I think we should maybe define this two concepts early on. And if this becomes a series that I'll talk about, I'll probably go back and visit this. So there's something called observational science, and there's something called historical science. So observational science, if I take hydrogen and oxygen any part of the world, doesn't matter where I am, I can take it to the Mars, and if I mix them, I'm gonna get some water, right? Hydrogen to oxygen. Doesn't matter where I go, doesn't matter what nation I'm in, it's always gonna yield observable result. That is observational science. There are things that are gonna happen in a lab and everybody can do it. It's always gonna yield the same results, right? So if I take a motor engine and put it into some vehicle, it just works the same thing. It's just gonna, the combustion, it just works always the same way because it's observational. And there's something called historical science. So this is what I mean by historical science. You find a skull, and two forensic scientists look at it, and they argue about what happened to the skull and what's the history with the skull. Somebody died, let's say, 100 years ago. Somebody died 1,000 years ago. Somebody died maybe 5,000 years ago, the skull. So in a court of law, one argues one case, the other one can argue the opposite, and the jury is like going back and forth and trying to figure out what happened. What is the story about this skull or something else in the forensic world? And there's a lot of room for dismissal of the arguments because it's like nobody was there. I have to put my faith into this expert or this expert. Perhaps both of them are experts. So historical science is looking into the past. So you and I can look at a piece of rock and come up with incredible conclusions. Conjecture. Nobody was there. Nobody can actually say for sure how it happened and what happened and how long ago it happened. But there's a lot of room for error here. As best as they can use whatever the tools they have in their hands. And a lot of the times, they love to mix it together. And there's a problem there. Because one is observational science. It can be proven in front of you, but the other one cannot. So I'll just explain this to you. So if we look into, again, I'm no expert, just as a simple person trying to understand how they came up with the age of the universe. This is what they're doing. They're looking at two things. How far is the star that we are seeing its light? How long it has taken to us, the furthest stars from us that are visible. And apparently they discovered that the Earth is expanding, and the rate is of its expansion. That's how they're coming up with the age of the universe today. Yes?
The universe. That you're saying the stars are moving farther away.
Yes, away from each other.
The stars are moving farther away from us.
The universe seems to be expanding, and the expansion rate is how they determine the origin of the universe, and they come up with the age of the universe. So now, let's talk about this, because I can actually, those two concepts I can understand how long the light travels to Earth. So the star has to be, if the Big Bang happened here, the star is so many billions of miles away because the lights are just arriving here. So that makes sense. And the expansion rate, if everything was here and they're now there, so it took so long because of the speed that they're traveling. So I can come up with those arguments. But here's one thing that is like profound to my thinking, and I don't know if it will help you at all. Here's what I have to say. When God does something, he never follows the laws of nature. Laws of nature are created for humans. He doesn't follow the laws of nature for the stars, meaning when he creates the heavens and the earth, what laws of nature is he following? When Jesus walks on the water, what laws of nature is he following? When somebody comes from the dead 4 days after, what laws of nature are they following? They're not following any laws of nature. When God creates everything out of nothing, he already broke the laws of nature because nothing comes out of nothing. So when God creates the stars, it could be 16 billion miles away and expanding as on the same second that he makes them. Should I say it again? Is that clear what I'm saying?
Well, say it again.
He's not sending the stars from here at the speed of light that it has to take 16 billion years. It can just snap them in their places, giving their lives today and with the expansion rate that they're in. He's not following any laws of nature. Why are we assuming that the Big Bang was done by God and God was limited to his own laws of nature that he created the earth for? Am I making sense what I'm saying? Can God make a star that is 16 billion light years away and that is giving us light immediately right now? That's what I'm just saying. So why are you assuming that it was 16 billion years ago he made it? It's a false assumption because we're trying to keep God into the laws of nature. He is outside of the laws of nature. He created the laws of nature perhaps for us, just like he created a day for me and for you. For God, what is a day? It's meaningless. He's outside of time. And when he burns up the earth and the skies, the heavens, he takes us to heavens, he takes us into this eternal thing. What kind of timekeeping is going to be in heaven? You think there's going to be a thing spinning around itself to give you the time? You're going to have a Seiko watch on your wrist?
Well, we know, right? There is no night there.
There is no night there.
So,
So when you're thinking about how God, like, for example, I'll give you one more example of this. The Christians, you guys heard about the Pangea, right? The Pangea, the supercontinent. All the continents were together. If you fold all the continents together, like the Africa to Brazil, whatever, it seems like they're all forming a shape together, like kind of like a bowl shape.
I'm waiting for the teacher to acknowledge it, the foreign teacher to acknowledge it.
So people say that it must have happened billions of years ago. And some of the Christians actually said that it's probably unlikely that it happened recently, because if they were like, it happened recently. Christian, one of the very prominent Christian website, probably the most popular Christian website, they said it could not have happened because it could have created great tsunamis and the whole earth would have been wiped out.
Christian Science Monitor? Is that what we're talking
No, I'm talking about Answers in Genesis.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're saying publication.
Well, so could God split the continents without causing tsunami? The answer is, can God stop the sun?
Yes.
What does it mean to stop the sun? That means you're stopping the earth. They figured out this is going to create winds and the humanity will fly off the earth if you were to consider science at the times of Joshua. Could God stop the earth without causing all these catastrophes? He is acting outside of the nature of law. Even as a scientist, you cannot say, God, this could not have happened because the data shows us this, because the data relies on laws of nature. God is outside of the laws of nature. He started everything out of nothing. What laws of nature you have to defend that? So everything we see, as they observe it, could be true, but assumptions are wrong. The assumptions are wrong because they're thinking that everything followed the laws of nature. That's why they can be as wise as they can be by their explanations. And the best answers they got to life is primordial soup. It was primordial soup 50 years ago when I first started to go to school. And it's still primordial soup because they cannot come up with any other explanation how life could have started here.
They don't believe in God, obviously.
And so you can say, you know what? Maybe this is hard for me to believe the way that God tells us how God created everything. I'll take the primordial soup and I say, Power to you, man. Put your faith into the primordial soup. And the beautiful part is, we will perhaps talk it in the next session, which is chapter 2 and perhaps 3, how God creates man in his own image and his likeness, male and female. There is no room in the biblical teachings for how we define evolution today. Like, you're going to say, what are you talking about? That we started on a simpler organism and humanity came out of it is a lie. There's no room for that at all in the scriptures. If you're telling me survival of the fittest, if you're short and you cannot reach the fig tree in Turkey and you will starve to death and only the longer ones are going to survive, I buy that. Unless you figured out how to climb up with a ladder, right? That's an explanation I can purchase. I can understand, the survival. If you're too weak, you're going to die. The stronger are going to survive, and I understand that. And you're going to have a smaller gene pool. But evolution, as they say that, we have started as whatever, and we evolved into, all the life form has evolved into this beautiful, perfect, very incredibly organized living organism because of the primordial soup. Is it really I just can't really buy it myself. I really put my faith in God in this point, and I'll look for evidence of this wherever I can, that this is how it happened. So I'll conclude it today here. But as disciples of Jesus, we cannot avoid this conversation. If God said he did it this way, this is how it happened. There's no other way. He said it to us. He's explaining to us. He's given it to us in the first words of his speech to us, how we are here, how he made us male and female. And everything else is we can just turn our backs to. Everything else we can just dismiss. They're wrong. They're wrong. They're wrong. They're wrong. Another thing that I wanted to say, so I wanted to make the distinction between observational science, where somebody's sitting in a lab and doing something, whether they're in China, in Turkey, or America, it's always the same result because they're doing the same process and the same chemistry, same biology. Observational science versus the historical science, looking at some layers of rocks in Turkey and try to make some sense of it. And the data will change. Their language will change. The books will be rewritten and rewritten and rewritten because somebody else smarter will come and contradict, and somebody will say, yeah, there's a contradiction there. I see it. The other thing is I want you to also make a note in your mind that when somebody's pursuing PhD, at least in this country, I don't know if it's true. My wife was pursuing a PhD, and I had a lunch with a friend who has a PhD in physics just a couple of days ago. When somebody's at university and they're getting advisor who's going to read their thesis and grant them the PhD, if the person is not in agreement or in the same philosophy, or I would not be able to attach my name to him and give him a PhD. Like, if you're a crazy guy, I cannot put my name because I am your advisor. My name goes into the records with you. And Betsy, when she was pursuing her PhD at the Boston University, it became very clear that she will not get a pass unless she swallow the consensus or whatever they were. I mean, this is like music education, ethnomusicology. It's not even science. They will not. And they kept on pushing her into this place where she has to regurgitate some of these concepts. Otherwise, she will not go forward. So you're going to say, so what am I saying? A lot of the knowledge that we have is regurgitated. You have to stay with the flocks. If the flocks say, this is the way, and you say otherwise, it's okay, you can say it. It's just that you won't have that degree from our university. I want to attach my name to it. So there's very little if you're like really counter cultural in any of your thoughts, you will not go far, because the system doesn't allow, because I have to put my name onto yours. And if you're crazy, like somebody's gonna come to me like, why are you so crazy? You didn't see that he's crazy? He doesn't go with the party line? He thinks that the earth was created only so long ago, and we were talking about 16 point some, the universe was created 16 point some. This guy is crazy. Just dismiss him. He can go to somewhere else. Anyway, what am I saying? It's a state of education and state of knowledge, especially scientific knowledge. And there's a lot of herd mentality, unfortunately. So I just have to throw that out to you, and I'll conclude there today. And